Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tell Me More, concept to cover featuring New York Magazine and The Atlantic. We're kicking off Duke Career Center's Tell Me More series with tonight's special DEMAN-inspired episode, featuring two all-star alums who worked together at the Chronicle, New York Magazine senior photo editor Maya Robinson and The Atlantic staff writer David Graham. My name is Sujal Manohar, and I'm from the Duke class of 2020. I'm currently serving as a Hart Fellow and AmeriCorps Artist in Residence at Imagine Art in Austin, Texas. At Duke, I served as the Chronicle's photo editor of Volume 114. Before we begin, I'd like to thank tonight's event co-sponsors, DEMAN Live, the Duke Career Center, the Chronicle, Baldwin Scholars, Duke Create, and Duke Arts. We'll share the complete list of our collaborators later on this evening. Please note that we are recording this Zoom session to stream later on DEMAN Live, as well as on the Duke University Career Center website. And please stay tuned after tonight's conversation when we will reveal the lucky winner from our raffle with the Chronicle. At this time, I'd now like to introduce David Graham from the Duke class of 2009. He is the former editor-in-chief of the Chronicle's Volume 103, and he is a current staff writer at The Atlantic. I will pass it on to David.
Thank you so much, Sujal. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Maya Robinson. Maya is a senior photo editor at New York Magazine, where she has been for 9.5 years. Previously, she was art director of photo and visuals and photo editor for vulture.com, which is New York's culture website. And she developed the visual identity of the brand there. She's also worked with Harper's Bazaar and Teen Vogue, and she graduated from Duke in 2011. I've known Maya since her freshman year at Duke, and I've been impressed by her eye and professionalism since, as well as her capacity for putting up with me as a boss, perhaps the most difficult part of that. We'll have a bunch of questions tonight. Many of them came from students in the Chronicle and the Baldwin Scholars and Studio Duke. We'd love to get more questions from you as we're rolling tonight. So post those in the Q&A function as we're going. But before we start chatting, Maya's going to talk a little bit about some of her work to help set up our conversation. So Maya, over to you.
Thanks so much, David. I'm really excited to be here tonight. And as David said, I'm going to start off by showing some of the photography that I work on producing for New York Magazine. One of the things that I do for New York Magazine is produce photo studios. And one of the photo studios is Sundance photo studio from last year. And we worked with the amazing photographer, Philip Montgomery. The really fun part of photo studios at festivals is photographing celebrities. But also the really thrilling part of it is that it happens really quickly. We photographed 70 people in 4 days. It's all about timing, and you have about 1 minute to 3 minutes with talent. So there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into shoots like this. You need to know what your lighting is and exactly what you're going to shoot. You're also dealing with talent reps and talent who can be tricky at times as well. So you need to make sure everyone's happy and comfortable as you're shooting. But we were really thrilled with the outcome of the photo studio last year. It was also one of the last big shoots that we did before lockdown. And then once lockdown happened, we had to figure out, how do we produce photography in 2020? And that meant shooting virtually. One of the first shoots we did at the middle to end of April was with the musician Kalani. And we were working with the photographer Pari Dudovich. And again, one of the big elements of this was pre-planning. You had to plan everything down to what type of lighting she had at her home. We did scouting on Zoom calls and FaceTimes to figure out what type of curtains she had that we could use. what we need to send her from Amazon to make the shoot work. But it's also similar to how we produce a normal shoot, figuring out what she's going to be wearing, what her hair and makeup's going to look like. And the big difference is that it was more collaborative than usual with the talent themselves. Kalani did her own makeup. Kalani's assistant was the one holding the camera. Those are things that don't usually happen. This is what it looked like in the magazine. And again, on this turn page. Another virtual shoot we did was with Tandy Newton. Dana Shrugs photographed her. Dana was in Brooklyn and Tandy lives in London. For this one, we wanted to take a really different approach. And instead of sending a light kit, we shot her outside in her garden. Really different result, but really great in a different way. Another thing that I do is photo research. And my foundation of photo research comes from my time at Duke, working for the Chronicle, being a major in visual studies, and also taking classes in the documentary studies center. Last year was a year of nonstop news, and George Floyd protests being one of the biggest. This sequence of photos I'm going to show you is a selection of images from a much larger gallery that was shared on the web and in the magazine. What made this edit unlike any other edit I've ever worked on is that the speed was really intense. We had images coming in at a breaking speed. We're looking at hundreds to thousands of images a day. We were working with new photographers all over the world, or all over the country, that were new photographers. Some photographers we'd been working with for a long time, but a lot of them were brand new photographers for us, which was really exciting, because a big part of covering this was making sure we were having the right photographers document this and having Black photographers tell this story. What made this possible really was working with a team of photo editors and making sure we had a lot of eyes on this project and making sure it was very organized. Organization is a big part of my job, and a big part of a creative job as well. Just making sure that you're communicating effectively and you're organized and can share your research and in an effective way. This was probably the hardest research project I have done, due to, as I mentioned, the speed of what was happening, and also the power of the images that were coming in, and just the emotion that was happening throughout the country. And you want to be able to capture, you want to be able to make sure that you're doing it justice and you're capturing that news in the right way. So there's a lot of pressure to make sure that you're doing it right. And in the time frame that you're doing it, there's only so much time in a day to do that edit. I think we did what we could in the 2 weeks that we were working on this project. The reason why it's focused on a 2-week period is because the magazine is produced in a 2-week cycle. We were also covering it on a day-to-day basis because of the web. And we continued to cover it after this one issue did publish. But we did, we didn't get every image, obviously. We missed some great ones and we made some mistakes along the way, but that's part of doing this job, is learning yourself as you go and learning with your team as well. Now, Another part of the job is producing the cover. And a recent cover that I worked on was the Chloe Zhao cover. And Chloe Zhao is, as of this morning, an Oscar-nominated director for her film Nomadland, which is also nominated for an Oscar. Highly recommend watching it. It's fantastic. The photographer we ended up going for this shoot was Amanda Demi. She has photographed for us before, and she really did an amazing job. Now, these were the 3 images that we were deciding between for the cover. The one on the left is a really beautiful portrait of Chloe. There's nice connection in that image, but her face is a little bit in shadow, and we really wanted her to come across strong. We wanted the image to be showing her in strength. And the middle image, she has amazing eye contact, and that's such an important part of a cover. So that was one that we were really excited about. And Amanda also said that we could crop into the image, which is something that not all photographers allow you to do, but was something that we had played around with in templates for the cover. Now, the one on the right, that's the thing that I loved about this image was the slight angle up to her face makes her look just so, there's a sense of power and command that a photo, and also her eye contact again is really powerful. And that is the image we ended up going with. The selection process for a cover goes through a whole round of people. We have a meeting where people from all different parts of the company come together, and we discuss what image works and what cover line. It's the most debated image in the entire magazine because it's the most important image. Then the other part of a cover is the inside image, because no cover story is just one image. So there's always an inside image.
Awesome. Thank you for all of those images, sharing all those images. Now, there's just some beautiful photography in there, and some really powerful images. And I think actually I want to flip it around a little bit from there, if that's okay. I think it's easy a lot of times for people to see what the press produces. When you see what people in the media do, you can see the product, but it's a little bit hard to understand what we actually do during the day. So can you walk us through, I mean, there may be no average day, but what a typical day or a typical week is like how you spend your time normally, how it breaks down?
Yeah, totally. Well, for the magazine, we are a bi-weekly. So we produce every 2 weeks. So I guess week 1 is what we would call our slow week, where we're kind of gearing up, which I'm in a week 1 right now. And we're gearing up for figuring out what the stories are. We're talking to our editors. And that's when we're all in brainstorm and research phases. Maybe we'll have a shoot already in process, but whether or not we actually have a shoot in week 1, it's pretty rare. We're all we work down to that deadline a lot. Week 2 is really where things start to happen. But my day-to-day, I spend a lot of time in meetings talking to editors about what it is if I'm working with an editor on a story, I'm talking to them about what their story is about. So I want to know like the basics of research, like those basic questions of like who, what, when, why, those type of questions of why are we interested in this person? Why are we doing it now? Like, give me all the details you possibly can, because in order to make a photo, in order for me to find that photo or to figure out my approach to it visually, I need to know everything you can tell me about it, because there might be the smallest detail about what you can tell me that's going to make that, to give us an interesting into visually. But it's a lot of time slacking. It's a lot of Zoom calls. I'm on Zoom calls all the time. Yeah, a lot of emailing to reps. And now that we're like in the virtual world, I'm on like virtual shoots like twice a week. Before virtual, I would be on shoots like 3 times a week sometimes. So it hasn't changed that much how frequently I'm on a set being, changes.
You mentioned producing shoots, and can you explain a little more what it means to produce a shoot? What are the steps you have to go through to produce a shoot?
Yeah, a shoot is, it started kind of the same way of you talk to an editor about what it is the story is about. So you need to know everything about the subject before you can even think about producing the shoot. But once you know who the subject is and you know the details about why the writer is interested and the editor interested in shooting that person, then the fun part begins. You have a conversation about what photographer you want to shoot the story. And that's a conversation that I have with my photo director and multiple photo editors, and we brainstorm back who it is that could work perfectly for that story. And figuring out matching a photographer with a subject is kind of like matchmaking. You like, the more photographers you know, the more people you know, the more things that are in your mind about like who works in that field of photography or who could make that image, the better. So for me, I'm looking for photography everywhere. And the like museums, books, Instagram, I spend too much time on Instagram. And you could look at a billboard, love something on a billboard. If you look up who the photographer is, that could be your next photographer. But once you find your photographer, then you go into planning all the details. And there's details, you have to be down to like what food the person likes sometimes to be on a shoot, what cars people are going to take to a shoot, what the weather is going to be like if you're shooting outside, what other really random things you have to control every element of a shoot. So you need to be really meticulous in how things will work, and making sure that what image you and the photographer know what the image is going to be, and so that you can accomplish it.
What is a virtual shoot? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, virtual photography, like the Kalani shoot and the Andy Newton shoot that I showed, they at the very beginning, both those are pretty early shoots that we did. I found them very exciting because everyone was in lockdown, and everyone's trying to figure out like this new medium of like how to do press. So like from the talent side, they're like, I still need to promote this thing or still do my job because press is part of their job. And for us, and for me personally, I was very excited because it was a creative outlet for me. Being stuck in my house and trying to figure out how to make my job still exciting when I couldn't produce any shoots. I was like, okay, here, I can make this work. I can make this exciting again. So it was fun to figure that out because it was a totally new way of doing photography. Like even photo editors and photographers who've been in the industry for like decades, longer than me, hadn't figured that out yet. So everyone was in it together from the start. So it was a new fun thing, if you wanted to be optimistic about it, which is the outlook I took on it. And what we ended up doing was using an app. There now is a much better app, but at the beginning, we were using this kind of antiquated app of connecting an iPhone to a Zoom call. And so it meant that the photographer could see what the talent was seeing on their iPhone. And then a person, so you'd need like an assistant there, would shoot the photos when the photographer would say like, now, shoot it now. You know, the photographer would be directing an assistant from like Brooklyn to London. So it was, but beyond the tech part, it was a lot of figuring out, again, all of those details. If we're shooting Thandi outside in London, we really need to make sure that it's not going to be a rainy day. We need a day where it's going to be sunny, or like at least not totally overcast, because we need some light to be able to make a image that works. But then for Kalani, we just bypassed outdoor lighting and sent her, because she lived close to LA, we sent her a lighting kit. So like something with stands, a whole light. Her assistant had a lot more work to do.
Did you like think about the photographers you assigned to these differently? I mean, did you think, if we're shooting this person virtually, we need a photographer who has a different skill set? Or was it, you know, are the photographers able to kind of figure these things out as they go too?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That's a big factor of trying to figure this out. And because all of these photographers are brand new to it, you're also teaching the photographer how to do this. So it's, oh, this photographer is very good at, like Dana Shrugs is very good at movement. She's very good at natural light. She could do something great with Thandi in London because she's going to be outside. And also Thandi's interview was very much about being a Black woman in Hollywood and about representation. So we really wanted Thandi to be photographed by a Black female photographer, and Dana is a Black female photographer. So all of those considerations are brought into account when you're thinking about who's going to be the right photographer for the project. For Kalani, we decided to go with Pari because Pari is a master of light, and he can really create amazing things with like very little tech. So that was also our first virtual shoot, and we were still figuring out. So Pari was the photographer who really helped me figure out like what we were doing with virtual. So it was a little bit of, we were both learning at the same time.
Did you ever imagine when you graduated, you'd be doing so much work with celebrities?
No, I did not. I thought I was going to go into like fashion photography. I was really obsessed with fashion in college. And fast forward to now, no, celebrity was not, I didn't think I was going to be a celebrity portraiture expert at this point, but yeah, that's kind of where I've fallen in. It's a strange path.
You showed us that, but you also showed us that, you know, that really hard news material, like the George Floyd photo essay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are the challenges of switching between those things? Are there things that transfer over naturally, and are there things that are particularly tough about going between them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The interesting thing is that when I was in school, what I was focusing on was a lot more journalism, and a lot like documentary studies was what I was really into. The Chronicle was like what I was all about, like live the Chronicle. But then when I graduated, I moved into this world of like entertainment. When I started working at New York Magazine, I went into working for Vulture, and Vulture is the entertainment site for New York Magazine. And I went into working on that side of things. And I just moved away just professionally from photojournalism, but it's not something that I didn't like forget those skills, and I didn't, it's not something I always wanted to go back to that. And so at New York Magazine, I've kept like looking for more opportunities to do that. So in the past couple of years, I've started being more involved in bigger photo research projects, which has been great. And what I find is that even if you're doing a portrait session with a photographer, portrait session, or you're switching to hard news, the lessons that you like, the skills that you bring to both are, you're looking for the same thing. Even though they're very different photographs, you're still looking for like the photo to tell the story. Even though portraiture tells the story in a very different way, but you were looking for photograph to like move you, to really like capture you. And I mean, if a portrait can move you the way that a person in a protest moves you, that's photography really doing its work. But I really think that there's not actually that big of a difference between the two. And there are like amazing war photographers who also shoot portraiture and can shoot celebrity. And so when you look closely at like what photographers do and what photo editors do, a lot of us do both. There's very few people who do one type of photography.
You were talking about photo research in that essay, and how much of that is finding the right photographers, how much that is figuring out what to shoot. What are the considerations you're taking in when you're doing that?
In regards to,
for example, with that Floyd essay, what are the things you're looking for, and what are you trying to balance?
Yeah, for something like working on the George Floyd protest, we were looking to tell the story. So what's images when we were in it, it was very hard to move away from, we know exactly what's happening now. But working to put this together the last couple of days was, wow, looking back at this now, this is very different to look at these images today than it was in May and June. And that's what we were trying to accomplish, was trying to make these images really carry and tell the story later on. We don't want them just to be powerful images for like now. So we wanted also, sorry, I think I froze. Needed to, tell the story. And it also, we need to be very cautious of like who was shooting who is capturing the images, and who was behind the lenses of the cameras. So it was due to just the industry, we needed to, and not having like Black photographers in different cities, or not knowing like there were problems that needed to be solved in the industry of finding Black photographers to document this, and reaching out and finding the Black photographers to be there and to shoot. And Black photographers are already there. It was our job to find them and to get captured, and to work with them to get their images into our desks. So it was a really great moment to have people come together and make big lists of the Black photographers that we should be reaching out to. It was a powerful moment to have people share resources.
You've talked a couple times about that representation thing, both with celebrity shoots and in this. I mean, is that a conversation that anybody was having in your experience 5 and 10 years ago, or is that more recent?
I think it's something that I have tried to do for for a while is, especially with I shoot a lot of musicians, and Vulture has always had a lot of representation in the people that they have photographed, and New York Magazine as well. But the amount of times we talk about it now in the office has changed a lot. And I think that across the industry as a whole, it has changed a lot. The photo industry was really awoken last year about the problems that were happening. So I think I'm happy that people are talking about it more.
You mentioned that, you felt like you made some mistakes in the process of putting together that essay. Can you tell us what some of those were?
I was wondering whether you'd bring that up. Yes. Our cover of George Floyd was shot by a white photographer, and it was not something that it was talked about before it was published, but the decision came down from the top that the image was powerful, and that we should move forward with that image. And we got feedback that that was not the correct decision. So that for our company, or for the editors, that was something that I think they needed to hear. And since then, that's part of the reason why those conversations have happened a lot more.
You talked a little bit about the remote shoots. Are there other ways that COVID has affected the way you do your job? I mean, even things like you talked about a cover meeting with all these people involved, and that seems like the sort of project that could be challenging even with everybody in a room. And trying to do that on Zoom seems even more challenging. How's your job changed just in the sort of quotidian ways during COVID?
Yeah, the cover meetings. We also have like bi-weekly photo meetings where we would all sit in a room and have a big projection of photography, and you'd hear people like ooh and ah, or like have just instinctual reactions, which sometimes not always great, which helps you understand what the imagery, like the response people would have to photography. But now it's done over a Zoom call, or sometimes just done in Slack, and you really lose that reaction. Like if you have a really great shoot come in that you're thrilled about, like you're like, this is great, and you share it in a PDF in a Slack channel and no one responds, it kind of loses the excitement about what you just produced. And just having creative conversations in a Slack format, it takes away that bouncing ideas off of each other. It's really hard to, I guess we're used to it at this point, but I'm looking forward to a day when I can have a creative conversation, bouncing ideas off of each other. And another part of working in a newsroom is that you hear other people's conversations. So you hear someone's working on something, or you hear them trying to brainstorm photographers or a design problem, and you could chime in. And now that's no longer the case because it happens on a Zoom or a Slack that you're not on. So there definitely, there's a lot of challenges working remotely.
Is it the case? When you are in person, what is it like to have all those people in the room? Is it a productive process, or is it like a clatter? Who makes the final decision? Like who chose that image, the closed out picture? Whose final decision was it that was the one to go on the cover?
Well, the cover choice is always the editor-in-chief has the final say. So it's the editor-in-chief, the photo director, and the design director would be like the three who have the final say. But editor-in-chief always has the final say on everything. But like working, I've been working in a newsroom my whole time. But I did work in, so I was on digital for the first couple of years of working at New York Magazine. And digital was like a very quiet area of the office. Like no one spoke to each other. Everyone had earplugs in and like listening to music or whatever. And then you'd walk over to the magazine side and it's like a bustle of noise and everyone's talking and it's like a totally different atmosphere. I now sit, photo and art are all put into one area now. And it was a big adjustment to be sitting next to all this noise all the time. But I did learn to really like the noise. But then we went into lockdown. So
that's the difference between a weekly and a monthly magazine, I think. At the Atlantic, the digital side is extremely noisy and the magazine is like a library. So it's interesting to hear that it works differently.
Yeah.
When do you worry, I mean, you were talking about the remote shoots and it's interesting the way that works and it get, maybe that makes it a lot easier for the subjects. Do you worry that it'll be hard to get access to, for example, celebrities after COVID because you've kind of opened the door to them being able to, not have somebody in their space and just sort of do it their way?
No, I actually think that celebrities, for the most part, there will be some celebrities that are just be like, oh, I could do this remote. But for the most part, celebrities enjoy shoots. So, and especially if it's for like a big project, there's a certain type of celebrity who like really wants to like you wine and dine them, like big studio, hair, makeup, the whole 9 yards. And then there's the other type of celebrity who's like a little bit, has been doing this a long time and like doesn't want to leave their house. So there's, you have your spectrum. But virtual shoots, actually, we ask more of a celebrity from virtual shoots because you have to, there's like transferring of files, there's them, you just have to ask them a lot more questions. I think it's a nightmare for the reps sometimes. So the only way I think virtual is going to continue after all this is if we want to work with like talent that's like in New Zealand, or we want to like work with, we have everyone in a studio, but we're working with a photographer in Morocco. So we like pretty much virtual in the photographer, but like the whole shoot is still the same.
What are the policies or guidelines you follow around celebrities? I mean, do they get a chance to look at the images before they go? Do you touch them up? How do you handle those things?
Well, there's no image approval. That's a no-no. Otherwise that would open a big can of worms. Sometimes they still fight back, but no image approval. And we, as New York Magazine, doesn't do very much retouching. I mean, we'll do light retouching, move little blemishes or hair out of place or whatnot. But for the most part, it's pretty light.
So you've made this transition from working on the print side or on the digital side to the print side. What are the differences you found between them? What do you have to think about differently, and what's easier or harder between the two?
The digital side is a lot faster. Sometimes I still work with I still oversee some of the digital, still oversee some of Vulture, so still work a little bit in digital, but I think it actually helps coming from digital going into the magazine, because I can move through a lot of things a lot faster. Like print really just, they spend their time working on one thing for a long time because they have the luxury of time in a lot of ways. I mean, they still move quickly through some stuff, but digital, for Vulture, we could have like 50 requests a day. And some of those requests have, like could be a slideshow and has 20 photos in one slideshow, and you're filling that request in less than an hour, or you're doing like a graphic treatment on top of a photo and you need that in 2 hours. Like the speed and like the zone you get in digital editing is really kind of exciting. And so sometimes I miss that, like, you just like lock in and you're like in it. I mean, you can still get in the zone, obviously, in magazine world, but it's very different.
So on Vulture, I feel like it's a lot of wire images, right? And then some treatments. Is that right? Is it largely, wire images you're pulling from services for the web?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, it's mostly like last night was the Grammys. So it was a lot of who wore what on the red carpet, like images of Beyonce and Taylor Swift winning their awards. Or it's images from TV shows and movies. But trying to figure out, because all of like Variety and Entertainment Weekly also has access to the same images. So we have a pretty, we have a style guide of like how we make our images like more thoughtfully cropped and edited than other publications.
Huh. Can you give an example of that, or is that like a trade secret?
We crop in tighter. And we have like 2-ups. So like if there's a side-by-side of 2 celebrities, there's like a certain split that we do that's different than other publications. Or if we're doing there's a ranking of Brad Pitt's best movies. It's evolved over time, it's changed a lot, but we do like a treater. They're called treaters, of like a photo illustration of him in different roles, and then it's colorful and graphic. So Vulture is it's like fun, playful, like really colorful. Just a little, like, I find the competitors just sometimes not to be as thoughtful as in their cropping and editing, but I'm also extremely biased.
Well, no, I mean, I think there's something to that. I think, New York is the magazine that I think I often recommend to people if they're going to read one. It's smart and it's cool, and it's really high quality. How did you get a job there? How did you end up in New York?
It was like very by chance that I got a job in New York Magazine. So to backtrack to how I got a job after college, I interned a lot in college, and one of my internships that I did Duke in New York, and my internship while I was in doing that program was at Harper's Bazaar. And that was a great experience for me. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I was in fashion. I was into like fashion photography. It was great. I mean, it was a lot of like getting green juices and coffee and filing things, but it was great. Those internships only really, like, getting coffee and green juices, I don't think that it's illegal anymore. But so after I did that internship, I kept in touch with my my mentor, like my boss, until I graduated college. And the Thursday before I graduated college, I did not have a job. I was going to move to New York. I was like, it's going to be like New York or bust, like it's going to happen. And I got a call from my boss at Harper's Bazaar saying, do you want to come work for us for a 3-month contract gig working for a supplemental issue? And I was like, yes, please. Like, that means I will graduate with a job. And that's fantastic. And the job started on Wednesday. So I moved to New York on Monday. And then after that contract ended, I was without a job for a week, a very scary week in New York. And then I got a job. I just applied to everything on the internet that week. And I got a job at at New York Magazine, just freelancing. And that freelance gig it was a 4-day-a-week freelance position, and that turned into a full-time job. And I have been there ever since.
I was joking to you before this that you're the millennial with the longest, you have a longer employment than any millennial in the United States. And one of the things I admire about you is the way you've managed to sort of find different ways to do different jobs in New York and to move through things and to keep growing while you're there. Can you walk through the different roles you've had and explain how, once you get into place, how do you keep moving like that? How do you make sure you don't sort of stagnate and you don't get pigeonholed?
Yeah, it was New York. New York has been great for me in a lot of ways because I have been able to grow a lot at the company. But there's also been really hard times at New York Magazine. Like I always knew I wanted to be producing photography. Like they knew that when they hired me as a full-time employee in 2012. And so them knowing what I wanted to do eventually was really important. Like being honest with your boss about like what your goals are and what it is that you want to do is really like, I think a really valuable skill for you to have and for you to just continue to keep telling people what it is that you want. And so as I kept going through New York, I kept like seeing other opportunities of like, oh, when I first started, I wasn't working for Vulture. I was working on all the blogs. And I saw that Vulture was a blog that really needed help. And it was it was also something I was interested in. The staff was really cool. They were all fun. So I was like, I want to work more on that site. So I started like talking to the editor-in-chief of that blog, started doing more projects with them. And then shortly I became the photo editor for them. And so if you see an opportunity, reach for it, I guess. And then after I was doing Vulture for a while, I kept pushing like what I knew I could do. And I even was able to take some classes through New York Magazine to gain some new skills because it's cliche, but learning doesn't stop after college. So that was really helpful. And I was able to that's how I started doing more design at New York Magazine. And then after a little while, I was able to start original photography for Vulture. And that was the first time, like, even though the fashion site was doing original photography, like, I was like, come on, it's celebrity. Everyone loves a good photo of a celebrity. Like, let's do it. So I finally got like the smallest budget in the world to do it. And I made the most out of a little money. And then I just like, every year, every time I got to check in with a boss, I kept like pushing for something more. So I think it's a valuable, it's valuable to just keep checking in with yourself to see like what it is you want to do and what also works for the company. But know that it's not going to be rosy all the time. 10 years is a long time. So yeah, not every year was it like a walk in the park.
That's awesome. That I'm gonna hire you as a career coach if you're willing to take that on freelance. This is like great pep talk. Do you ever shoot?
I don't shoot anymore. I get that
Do you
question.
miss that or no?
Not really, actually. I really like being on the other side and helping people create their photos instead of shooting for myself.
Would it be possible to do your job if you had never shot, or is that an important part of being able to do what you do now?
I think it helps actually a lot that I did shoot and that I had that experience of like running to find the photo on campus and or like being on the campaign trail in 2008. That was like, I mean, those are super strong memories from college. And like doing election coverage now, I still think back to those times. So yeah, I think it was really, really valuable experience.
You touched on this a little with this sort of just the hustle and being ready to do things, but what's the advice you have for people who want to go into journalism, and in particular to photographers, to sort of find opportunities and build connection with photo editors and get into that Rolodex so there's somebody that someone like you thinks about when they need someone to shoot?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to photo editors is send emails. You may not hear back from a photo editor through email, but the probability that they see your email, they see your name, they read it is high, but the reply back is small. It's unfortunate to hear that, but I see my inbox is so full that I just don't have time to respond to everyone, but I do see emails. And also, right, postcards are not, they sound antiquated. But once people are back in an office, sending like physical cards as a photographer is a great way to get something on someone's desk, because it's physically on their desk. Like that's where mail delivers to people in offices. So they can't ignore it. And that if you put your most memorable photograph on the cover of that card, and someone will remember you and reach out, and or like have a really active Instagram account, because that's where a lot of people are looking for photographers. Like when we're in meetings and we're talking about photographers, the first place we go to is Instagram. Like, oh, what's their photography like? If they have an Instagram account that's not like super active, it's odd.
What are you looking for when you're sort of flipping through Instagram, or looking at an email someone sent you? What tells you, hey, what stops you? What tells you, hey, I want to work with this photographer?
Well, it depends. It's really, there's a large range of what I'm looking for, because I'm working on a lot of different types of projects. So if it's a cold email and someone has a engaging subject line, they are telling me a little bit about what the project's about, or a little bit about their background. They have images in the email. It's not just a link. All those things are important. And I'm looking for a photographer who has a point of view, that's not all over the place. You don't have to have shot like a million things to have a point of view, but you know what you want, like what type of photography you want to tell.
Somebody put a really good question to you, and I think this is valuable. What about people who are interested in photography and interested in journalism, but are wise enough not to want to make it their primary career? Do you have advice for those people?
Yes, wise people. I would say, start freelance. I know that freelance sounds like a really scary term. And like, it doesn't come with benefits. Like your parents might be really scared of that word too. But a lot of the photographers I know working today started off freelance. They have full-time jobs and would shoot whenever they could on the side. And some of them are still freelancers, and have full-time jobs. And some then developed a big enough portfolio when they had their full-time jobs that they were able to switch to photography as a career path. But some also shoot and also have a job. Like there's no one right way to do it. So do what works for you. And if you especially starting off after college, like don't be afraid to work a job and also shoot. Especially when you're getting off the ground, because you're not gonna it's hard to get that first call, those first couple calls to have the assignments coming in.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked in the chat, how involved photographers are in the photo editing process. Like, do they shoot the photos, they send them to you, and then you do your magic? Are they involved in? They give you feedback on it. What is their role after they shoot?
Oh, that's a great question. I always ask photographers to send in, like when they send in the whole shoot. Well, they send in their edit of a shoot. They also mark things as favorites so that we know when we're looking at it, like, oh, this was Pari's #1, or this was Dana's #1, so that we can take into account like what their view of the shoot was, or like what they like the best, because it's not just us, they're involved in it. So it's a collaborative editing process.
I put a ton of questions to you and exhausted you a little bit here, but I want to give you a chance to, if you have any sort of final words of wisdom or final thoughts you want to leave us with before we turn this over. What do you got?
I know that when I was at Duke, I was a little like I was scared about going into the photo industry, even though I was like, I had taken all I had done all the internships, and like, I knew that photo was what I wanted to do. But as I was just saying, like, if photography is like what you want to do, try the freelance route. Like, if you get a job offer in photo, like, power to you, like, that's awesome. But like there are people who do freelance for a long time too. So, and it can be like, that can be a career as well. So I like, photo for me has been an extremely exciting career for me. And if you want to reach out and ask any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, and for being willing to answer those questions and future ones. Thank you to all of you, the attendees, for being here. Thank you to DEMAN and the Chronicle, Baldwin Scholars, to create. Before we wrap up, I'm going to pass the baton over to Greg Victory, the Executive Director of the Career Center, and he'll announce our lucky Raffle winner. But for Maya and from me, thanks so much and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, David and Maya, for both an engaging and immensely valuable conversation for Duke students and alumni hoping to break into the creative industries. We are grateful for your time this evening. Now it's time to announce the winner of our raffle in collaboration with the Chronicle. Can we have a drum roll, please? The lucky winner of a $100 Amazon gift card and subscriptions to both New York Magazine and The Atlantic is Jessica Avery from the Duke class of 2007. Jessica, the Chronicle will follow up via email, so you may receive your fabulous prizes. Special thanks to the Chronicle for supporting tonight's efforts. Before we wrap, we do want to extend our gratitude to the many collaborators across Duke who helped us spread the word about tonight's events. We couldn't do events like this without these fantastic group of colleagues. You can also stream tonight's conversation along with more episodes of DEMAN Live on arts.duke.edu/DEMAN. And we want you to keep Zooming with us tonight. Join Duke Baldwin Scholars for a conversation with Blair Imani at 8 p.m. tonight. So in a few minutes, this is the 16th annual event in the Gene Fox Obar Distinguished Speaker Series. And Nina has put that in the chat so you can see it. Thanks, Nina. Thank you again for joining us. Again, thank you to David and Maya for a fantastic evening. Until we meet again, stay safe, be well, and we'll leave you with more music from John Brown, Duke's Vice Provost for the Arts. Have a great evening.